Hey everyone, this is your host, Andrew Holland. Thank you so much for listening to the Andrew Holland podcast each and every week, where we talk about business, entrepreneurship, and everything in between. As an entrepreneur who's been through a lot of highs and a lot of lows, I started this podcast to be a source of weekly motivation, inspiration, and support for all of us who are working to achieve something meaningful. And as importantly, so that none of us ever have to feel alone or isolated while we're doing so. Together, we explore the stories of successful people, we get insight and advice from individuals who have accomplished amazing things. We discuss practical and fascinating business models and strategies, and we dive deep into understanding ourselves as human beings. So please, help me grow our group and subscribe to the show on your favorite audio platform. Subscribe to, watch, and thumbs up our episodes on our YouTube channel, the Andrew Holland Podcast. Follow and interact with me on Twitter and Threads. My handle is A Holland Podcast. That's A Holland Podcast. That's probably my favorite part of the whole podcast is the interaction I get with our guests and with you as our listeners. Lastly, if you enjoy the show and you want to support what we're working to accomplish, please share our show with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues at work. This show is nothing without you and your support, and I'm so incredibly thankful for each and every one of you listening, watching, and sharing the podcast every single week. Now it's time to get our motivation, inspiration, and support for this week and jump into today's episode. In today's episode, I sit down with Kevin Blackburn and Eric Ganz, both managing partners and co-founders of 360 Industrial Services, a staffment placing agency that is very similar to Manpower or Tradesman International in that they provide workers for a lot of the blue-collar industries, solar, renewables, oil and gas, mining, marine, construction services. And they talk about how they got into the industry and how they've accomplished growing a company that is now doing over $50 million in annual revenues. In the 21st century, staffing and personnel is a challenge for every single company, whether it's an entrepreneur or a Fortune 500 company, and they have some very unique and interesting insights onto how they've really successfully navigated the HR role and how they're helping all their clients find solid talent, retain that talent, and ultimately growing the overall talent pool. We had a really interesting conversation. Kevin and Eric are very jovial guys, and they've really created an amazing business. They're both very blessed, and I really enjoyed talking to them. I think you'll enjoy the insights and their story as much as I did.
Andrew Holland is a CPA, a real estate broker, and involved in multiple businesses, including some investment companies. The Andrew Holland podcast is for informational purposes only. All of Andrew's views and those of his guests are solely their opinions and do not reflect the opinions of any of the businesses or companies Andrew or his guests are affiliated with. You should not treat any advice, conversation, business recommendation, investment recommendation, or anything of the like as a specific inducement to make a specific business decision, take a specific action, make a particular investment, or follow a specific business or investment strategy. Thank you so much for listening and enjoy the show.
Kevin, Eric, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to the Andrew Holland Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So I want to hear both of your stories, how you guys met, and background on why you guys decided to be entrepreneurs. But not only that, but in the staffing agency. Staffing is one of the most difficult things in this day and age for any company. You guys obviously know this. I don't need to tell that to you. But take me back. Did you guys meet at Tradesman International?
We did.
Okay. So Kevin, tell me about your history there. You and I talked previously. You're like, this is a mess. Then you did a couple other jobs and then you decided to start 360 Industrial Services. Tell us what made you take that risk.
Yeah, I mean, I started in 2003 just as a sales rep. And the market in Phoenix was ripe. There was a crane on every corner. Big opportunity, but there hadn't been any real revenue out of that office. So I kind of hit the ground running. I had just gotten engaged. I was getting married that following February. So I, was motivated by getting as many people out and billing and collecting and making commission.
This is with Tradesman International.
Yeah.
And for our benefit, what is Tradesman International?
Tradesman International is a nationwide skilled staffing firm.
Okay.
Been around since mid to late 90s. Great company, great background, great training. That's where we got our feet wet and we learned everything. Stayed there, had a lot of success, was one of their top reps within the company. Then Eric came in 2006 and his cubicle is right next to mine. So he got to hear what I was doing. And very quickly, I had, after the downturn, they had moved me into a different division. And I had to relinquish a lot of my accounts. And in the past, anytime I had to take an account and give it to someone, account just dropped. With Eric, the accounts not only didn't drop, but they grew and he kept the relationship. So he saw like what is necessary in this business to separate yourself from the quote unquote competition. And that's when we realized that Tradesman's a great name, but our clients don't care about Tradesman. They don't care about 360. They care about Kevin. They care about Eric.
Yeah.
And so we use that. And then things just weren't working out or growing where we wanted to go. And that's when I went ahead and left to a smaller company out of Louisville. We grew that company. Eric came in 5 months after I started.
Okay.
We grew that company from about 2 million to 12 million.
This is Road Dog Industrial?
Yep.
Is that right? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And then things just weren't working out there for whatever reason. And so that's...
This is Louisville.
Louisville. You have to say Louisville.
Louisville. Where? Kentucky?
Yep. Louisville, Kentucky.
Okay. So wait, where are you born and raised?
Columbus, Ohio.
Eric, where are you born and raised?
South suburb of Chicago.
Okay. So you went to the Ohio State. I'm a Wolverine, by the way. So he's been giving me garbage basically the whole time so far. And of course, Michigan's in a whole bunch of hot water over the sign controversy and yada, yada. They just don't hide it as well as the Ohio State does. How did you get to Arizona, Kevin?
I don't know how long this podcast is, but I graduated. I actually got engaged on the football field during the Michigan State game. That engagement did not work out, but the plan was the two of us were going to move on a work visa and go over to Ireland and work after college before we got our feet wet and working. And we broke up and I said, let's just not go. She canceled her tickets. I did not. I still went.
You still went to Ireland?
And then I went there by myself. I was a door-to-door salesman selling restaurant and gym cards to the Irish folk. And it was quite the crack, as they say. Good times, living in Temple Bar. And then I stayed there for about 6 to 8 months. And then I had the opportunity with a marketing company that I worked for in college to come back. Moved to Boston, was doing some marketing there. 9/11 hit. They changed their marketing plan. They moved me to St. Louis to be a product development person for Bosch Power Tools, where our job was we had a chase vehicle traveling, following a semi to show how the power tools worked. And very quickly I learned and looked and said, I think we can drive that truck. So we negotiated to say, hey, why don't you just pay us half of what their salary is going to be and give us their per diem? We went and got our Class A license in Jefferson County, St. Louis. And then I drove a semi every city west of Denver for a year.
With your Class A?
Bouncing around, staying in hotels. I was a Diamond member immediately. And then at a bar one night, met my wife. We moved down to Arizona in 2002, started a cell phone company, did that for a little bit, and then found myself walking into the staffing world.
Okay. Eric, jump to you. Where did you say you were born and raised again?
South suburb of Chicago.
Okay. And where did you go? You went to ASU.
Yep.
Why ASU?
It was warm. I started my college career in Wisconsin, Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, Marion College, and played Division III hockey up there.
Okay.
And quickly learned that it's way colder than Chicago, and it was a small school, really small. You knew everyone quickly. After about my sophomore season of hockey, I was like, I'm good. I'm done. I got to get out of here. So applied a couple of schools, got in, but like ASU was the cheapest and had the best weather, and I went.
ASU was the cheapest?
Well,
boy, how things have changed.
Yeah, right?
Holy smokes.
And that was 2001, so moved down here, never moved back.
And then you went to Wharton?
No, I did Wharton for a couple different additional associate business
Okay.
classes / whatever.
What was your major at the Ohio State?
Communication.
And yours, Eric?
Communication.
Okay. You guys obviously went to different schools. You met at Tradesman International. And because you saw that he was one of the only account reps that basically cared about the clients,
Correct.
like you did, you guys kind of formed a partnership, if you, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you went to Road Dog International. You followed him?
Yes.
Okay. And tell us about, you guys grew that tremendously and it didn't work out.
Yeah. We thought it was going to work out. We helped with the brand. We helped with the infrastructure. And
Was it a startup?
it wasn't a startup. It was a guy I'd known from Tradesman, and he had a decent thing going. He was building his business was off the relationships that he had.
Mm-hmm.
But what we saw was we came from this world of like dot the I's, cross the T's, process, procedure, Tradesman International. Great, right?
Yeah.
And then we come to Road Dog, and it was, a little bit more of a loosey-goosey type thing.
Yeah.
It still was a business and it was still operating, but we kind of tried to refine that process, the CRM and things that we were using and developing. And then not only was it brought in, but then Eric and I dove into that software on how do we make this software everything we want.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, that software has a box. So we got it as far out as you could get without having to do what they call professional services. And right near we were getting to the end, we had phone call integration, we had time card integration, but right when we got to the end, they were going to need more of our money to pay for that. And that was the time where we were exiting.
Okay. So this software you guys developed while you were working
No.
at Road Dog? Or
That was just a basic software off the shelf.
Okay.
But it had a lot of flexibility and you could tailor it. But it got to the point where we couldn't do anything more. And we used that software when we started 360.
Okay.
It was just then we had the opportunity when we came across some developers in town here, a great company called Rad Development, that there was an opportunity to say, hey, we can build what we feel the industry's missing.
Yeah.
So
you guys just jumped around. You went to Louisville, Kentucky, as you say, and that didn't work out. And then you both ended up back here.
No, we never moved there. We lived here.
Oh, you lived here. Okay. So it was remote work essentially.
yeah, we had an office here locally to help with the West Coast. He was more regional, Kentucky, Louisville, Tennessee, South Carolina. Stuff like that.
How did you know it was time to do your own thing? Because a lot of people are in a situation where, they're in their 30s, 40s, even 50s, and they don't feel fulfilled with what they're doing. They feel boxed in at the company that they're working at, and they know they can do so much better than that if they did their own thing, but they're deathly afraid. The fear, right? When you have a family, when you have kids, as you get older, you have all these responsibilities. How did you guys do it? Well, how did you get past? You had to be afraid when you started 360 Industrial Services, right?
Sure.
Anybody going into entrepreneurship, it's a terrifying move. Give us some insight into how did you just say, we're going to do it? Did you just plow forward and never look back? Tell us about it.
We kind of didn't have a choice. It kind of got to a point at Road Dog where it just wasn't, there was no path forward for us.
Okay.
Like, he wasn't going to grow it the way we wanted it to. He was going to put in the infrastructure the way we wanted to. So it was either go find another company to work for,
Mm-hmm.
or do it ourselves, and knowing that if we did it ourselves, it's going to be based the way we wanted it.
Yeah.
And looking back, like, we had no idea how much actual work we were going to actually put into this, but still the best decision we've ever made.
We also I had a good client, became a friend, who owned a big steel erection company in Arizona. And he'd always said, hey, if you leave, go anywhere, I'll follow you, whether you're selling rental tools, whatever. And he was at a position where we kind of used him as advice on how to grow. And he said, hey, why don't you start your own? I'll help you guys out to get started. And he helped us to a degree, but then we learned he didn't actually know as much as we needed him to know.
Uh-huh.
So we found ourselves starting a company thinking that we're going to get workers' comp coverage, to now not having no workers' comp coverage, to payroll issues, funding issues.
It was a lot of learn on the job, try to figure it out, piece it all together. I think at one point we had 8 different work comp policies throughout the country to get, 30 some states included that we can work in. And then working with a funding factoring company to, basically give us a line of credit. And we pieced it together, figuring out how to do payroll, how to make it all work. And mean, looking back on it, we were crazy to do it, but I mean, I learned a lot. I mean, I feel like I have a master's degree in workers' compensation, which I would never tell anyone to learn that much about it. But
Yeah.
knowing what I know, it helps with every decision we make in the business.
Okay, so 360 Industrial Services now, you're doing more than 50 million in revenue every year. You guys have clients in 48 states. I mean, you've grown huge in a matter of 10 and a half years. I want you to, as best as you can, you've just briefly described, like, what advice would you give to someone that is working for a company, but they just don't know how to take the step you guys took? Like, you were married. Were you married at the time, Eric?
No.
Okay, so, but you have people in your life that are important to you. That's a big move to make. Give us some insight. Like, you guys talk. You guys are staying in communication this whole time, right? After he leaves Road Dog Industrial.
Yep.
Were you guys owners at Road Dog, or were you just working for him?
Just working for him.
Okay, and there was just basically, and this happens with a lot of business owners. One wants to grow the business tremendously, the other doesn't. And that often is an opportunity to kind of diverge paths. And that's where you guys essentially were.
Yeah, and we made a decision together, like, let's start our own company.
Okay.
Do it, get a company going. And then, I think what we've learned, kind of to go a step back from what you said, there's a lot of people that go, oh, I'm just going to go start my own staffing company that are maybe have worked for us or work for others.
Mm-hmm.
And we always say, go, try. You think it's easy. And what we've learned is that it's not easy. And I think we bet on ourselves. And we knew, from the get-go, even our relationships with our bank, our relationships with our workers' comp, previous someone else you had on the podcast, Ben Garland, like, we surround ourselves with industry experts.
Yeah.
And it's timing, what do they say? Luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Yeah, exactly.
Or opportunity would have.
And you had a client that was willing to take a risk on you guys, and he helped you get started essentially, because he said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to outsource all my labor to you guys.
No.
Okay. Tell us how that happened.
Go ahead.
Yeah, he basically said, I got you. From a financial standpoint, I can lend you some money. I've got all the contacts in the industry / in Phoenix to help you get started, from banking, work comp, all this stuff. We're going to get it all set up for you. And then you guys, I know you guys will, do well. And it was, okay, it was a level of comfort for both of us. So, like, okay, great. We don't have to, like, make money day one.
Yeah.
We don't have to, know all of the ins and outs from every industry, and whether it be insurance, banking, whatever, payroll. And those, as he started making introductions, it was like, no, we don't do that. No, we don't do that. No, you need to go over here. And it's like, oh man. So we quickly started pivoting and figuring out things, like, because we didn't have a choice. We were in that at that point.
Mm-hmm.
We no longer had jobs. We had a company with no revenue coming in.
I had 2 in diapers.
Yeah. And like, it was like, okay, go at it. And so we just started talking to companies, asking. And again, the biggest thing I think both of us did was we asked questions, lots of questions. I wanted to know how did the factoring work? I wanted to know how did the workers' comp, why we couldn't get it for the policy we wanted for all 50 states.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, you can't do that. Okay, wait, okay, great. And so the reality is we had to learn on the job. And looking back, it was the best thing that happened to us, because if I would have banked on someone else knowing it, I may never have learned.
Yeah.
And in turn, I had to learn, and I had to learn quick. So getting those industry experts that we started, and we went through a bundle of people that were not industry experts that were like, oh, we can do this for you. And nope, they had no clue. And so we've gone through vendors, if you will, companies that we work with that weren't industry, but we found a lot that are. And I lean heavily. I bring them in on conference calls with us still to this day.
Okay, so you're talking about workman's comp. For a lot of our listeners, they don't know, what is your business model? What does 360 Industrial Services do? Give us some insight, Kevin, on what is your overall business model and how do you help your clients? What do you do for them?
Sure. We have 2 divisions. I would say majority of our business is temporary manpower staffing. So we partner and plan with contractors to consult them on a better way to manage their workforce throughout the year. Construction has its peaks and valleys. Typically, companies will either hold on to employees to keep them employed, even though the project's done, until the next one, or they'll hire and fire for seasonal. Both of those hurt the overall productivity and profitability of a company. So we come in and say, let's right size your workforce and let us partner and plan. So I need 40 people. We send those people out. There are our employees are on our W-2. We have all the taxes, insurance, and burdens associated. The workers' comp is if someone's injured on a project, that our insurance covers that, not our clients.
Yeah.
So that's one of the benefits of you utilizing us, plus the payroll costs. And then our other division is more of a traditional staffing model, direct hire, superintendents, estimators, project managers, vice president of operations. We find through talent acquisition, people that fit the need that our client has, more than likely are already working in another company, making the introduction. They have the hire, and then we have a fee associated with their annual salary.
From a revenue perspective, is it 50-50 between those two segments, or is your staffing side much higher?
Yeah, 95% staffing side.
And essentially, you just invoice me, the client, every month, and you take care of all the human problems.
Every week.
Yeah, we bill every week, and in our industry, typically payment is due upon receipt, not to exceed 30 days. We're not a bank. If they had these employees, they'd be paying weekly. That is one of the struggles in our industry that, we go, well, I'm waiting to get paid and I'm going to pay you. And we have to remind them of our agreement. And that's when we base our rates upon timely payments as well. So that's how we do that. On the direct hire side, although it is only about 5%, it's very profitable for us because we're just very efficient. Our team is very smooth and runs efficient. Those are then invoiced, when the employee starts and they're due. So, we have weekly invoicing and then we bill based upon the hours that we're working the previous week.
So you guys focus on what I like to call the blue collar industries. Construction. You guys just started a marine segment where you're helping, whether it's the Navy or shipyards find employees. When you guys first started, how did you find these people to work for these companies? Like, how did you know all the workers?
Well, that was part of the transition from just working locally, where Kevin and I got our start here in Phoenix with companies, to working nationally. Part of that was really being able to find the workers that are willing to travel and work on per diem. So basically jobs in Austin, Texas, they can be from anywhere. So we get them from Oklahoma, New Mexico, Arizona to all go to work the job there. And so ultimately our pool of candidates, employees, was the whole country. And so we looked at that model, and that was our model from day one. Like, okay, we're gonna go after a lot of this travel work, this industrial work in these facilities that they can, typically most of them are remote in a location that's not a big city. And so guys are gonna have to travel in and out anyway, and allow us to pick and recruit from anywhere. So we knew what we were doing from a recruiting standpoint there. It was just a matter of getting the clients, getting the correct jobs, and then ultimately finding the right employee.
But how do you do that? So you just said something, finding the right employee in the 21st century for anything, especially as these cell phones have really changed have changed everything. You guys have figured out the puzzle, but it took you a long time to get there. Like the first year, what did you guys do in revenue?
First 6 months, we did over $3 million. And by
how? No company their first 6 months does that much in revenue.
Well, it was, Kevin, it kind of changed.
It's changed. We started the company. We're like, hey, here's our plan. We're going to both do sales. We're going to bring this person on as a recruiter. We're going to bring this person on as a bookkeeper. These are people that know what they're doing there. Hey, we're not recruiters. There was a little tumultuous start we had with the exit from our previous company. That is not to be unexpected. And so very quickly, we found ourselves with our hands behind our back, and, we're pretty much bobbing for apples. It's not as easy. So when we could get a bite of that apple, we bit it, pulled it out, and worked that. So we couldn't go after the low-hanging fruit. And I was able to get into some companies, even companies that I tried to get in before. In the last 10 years doing that, couldn't get in. We finally get in, and boom, start growing. And then we make another contact with the company, and he's like, I'm going to make I'll bring you over to this company. So we grew that really quick. That forced Eric to jump into the recruitment role. I still kind of kept going on the sales role. So then he started learning all these things. And what's amazing is some of the best recruiters in the world I would put Eric still up against them, because he's now learned it's a sales job as well. You have to sell the employee on, why would you want to work for 360? I can go work for ABC Mechanical. Well, look at your resume. You have 15 jobs in 2 years. Do you have benefits? No. You work for us. you could have 15 jobs, still stay on our payroll, 401k benefits, all those things. So that's how we kind of separated. We grew. And my focus in this industry, and so is Eric's, has always been on repeat business. I don't want to keep signing up companies every day. I want to have a relationship where you can call me and see what you need. I can tell you yes or no. And at the end of the day, we'll have ongoing relationships. And if you're mad about something, you can yell at me and I can yell at you, but it's the ones where we always say we would take a boutique approach to what we do. And we want to do business with companies that want to do business with us.
Yeah.
If they're like, I got to use chat, well, then we either haven't consulted them right or they've had a bad experience. So let's try to turn that around.
Yeah.
So that's how we grew. And I think we did 7 million the next year.
7 or 8.
And 12.
I mean, you guys make this sound easy.
It wasn't.
It wasn't. It was grinding a lot of it, but it was like you said, though, like once I had to jump back into recruiting, it was more the same approach that Kevin has and I had to managing a client. So obviously getting the agreement back for us that they're going to do business with us is great. But once you actually get an order from them, get guys on a job site for them, that's when the real sales and work starts. Because how you manage who's going out, how you manage the employees to make sure they're having the experience they need to have on the job site and they're being treated well, how you manage the clients so that they know, these guys are performing, they're not performing, they need more, they need less. And that kind of approach is how I took to recruiting and made our team, as it grew, do the same thing. Like we're constantly communicating, and that's maybe where the communication degree kicked in. Although my wife will tell you I can't communicate, but that's a whole nother story.
Likewise, they're pretty much surprised that we can get through a day based on what we do at home.
I think that's a common theme between the genders.
Yeah, it's just like
we do well together.
Yeah,
but that's how we built it with the field employees. Like we're making sure they know everything before they get to the job site, and make sure the client knows everything before that employee gets to the job site. So it's a smooth experience.
When you're bundling teamwork and a culture is so incredibly important to any organization's success. When you're taking people from all across the country, how does 360 Industrial Services, how do you guys make culture happen for your clients? Because you're bringing in new people to different construction sites, or whether it's oil and gas, how do you embed that sense of teamwork when you have inconsistent teams, really? Inconsistent personnel on these teams?
I think it starts with the recruitment process of making sure that we're making the right decisions. These are the people they're the face. And like what Eric said, we've always taken that extra step. I'm calling Jimmy, I'm calling Sally and saying, you're going to this job. This is what they do. You're the face of our company. Or even tell them, this is the first project we have with this client. And maybe they're a new employee. They haven't worked for us. So that's risky, right? We've got a new client, we've got a new employee. But our vetting, background checks, checking references, not from their cousins or brothers or aunts or uncles, but like the foreman they worked for, finding out, oh, yes, Jimmy's the best electrician I ever had, but he misses every Monday. And I'd rather have a guy that was here every day that gave 80% because then I can plan my work. So we get that type of feedback and then we make decisions. And then when we line the person out, we say, look, this are the results that we got from you. And it looks like you do a really good job, but you have some tendencies on that. Let's work on that.
Yeah.
And let's get you to make more money by working all the hours that are available to you.
But it's also setting expectations with the client too. So if the guy is, this productive or this experience level is the max for him, we let him know that ahead of time with a lot of the things we do, because at the end of the day, expectations are everything. And if you're expecting to have the greatest of the great show up, and this guy hits 5 years experience, like he's never going to meet those expectations. So setting it with that foreman, with the superintendent, whoever he's going out to work with, is huge, because now he knows where he's going to line him out to. He knows what to expect of him. He knows what experience, where he's worked for. Like it's a lot easier than, oh, okay, how you doing, Andrew? I don't know anything about you. I got to figure it out. But the expectations for Andrew were so high.
Yeah.
And part of, all staffing companies' value proposition, right, is that you've got your A and B players, and the C's are you keep revolving and getting out the door. And when we bring people, we always say, hey, our people aren't any better. They should be A and B.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not, use our 8-hour guarantee that's very standard in staffing. or 4 days in, if they're not, let them go. You have that flexibility.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it, and setting the expectation of what we're bringing. And that's where part of our growth and where our growth is continuing is that every other staffing company out there right now will send an email, a text message, that's how we did, or phone call. That's how we line the employee out. 2014, we started a basic, small little investment into a software that has now, hopefully my wife doesn't listen to this podcast, but we could have had a couple houses, I think, at this point, but it's also made the company more profitable. But that's when we started developing something to say, hey, let's do this to make it easier on us and a better experience.
Yeah.
Because everything you do in life is about the experience. So you start working with us, and then you go back to another company like, well, hey, I want to be able to see who's working where in pictures and all that. And that's where our Access software has really, driven us to the next level.
So Access software, you guys had an opportunity, and as Kevin just talked about, it's basically an all-around 360 software that allows the employees to log in, is that client focused, or employees, or everybody can utilize Access software?
It's mainly client focused with an app for the employees to build out their profile, search jobs, stuff like that. Really, we started it off as just a client portal so that we can be really transparent with our clients, letting them know who's working for them, where they're working, how many hours, invoices, and it's morphed into bios, pictures, runway lists, anything you can think of that allows our clients to know just what we're doing on the back end, so that ultimately they can plan out their day. They can plan out their months. They can plan out their next job. They can look back and see what they did on a certain job for us, because at the end of the day, information is everything.
Yeah.
Giving it to them versus, I talked to someone recently and they're using another company. He's like, I didn't know I had 30 employees working on that job until a month later, and we were paying the invoices, and I saw the names of the invoice, and I'm like, but how would you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So what Access software, I want to talk about a decision point you guys had to make where you had an opportunity. You referenced this briefly, Kevin, to say, you know what? Let's focus on really SaaS, make it a SaaS software, services software.
Kind of.
Its own entity, if you will, versus just making that your competitive advantage at 360 Industrial Services. But before I do that, one of the things you guys talk a lot about, and it's what I appreciate about what you guys are doing, and I've already heard it talking, the personalization side of things. And you guys really look for character. I'm a big believer, and in all of my companies, I don't hire for skills anymore. If you're going to be a lawyer, okay, you got to have a law degree, obviously. But personality, you can train or teach almost anybody anything. But personality, that character, someone who knows right from wrong or what the right thing to do is, not because I told you, but because that's a part of who they are. You guys have a certain process that you utilize to really get to the heart of that. And obviously it's been incredibly successful for you guys. How did you do that? Or how do you do that? Because that's so hard to judge for any employee. An interview won't cut it. There are a lot of people who are great at faking interviews, and understanding who someone really is to make sure they're going to be a good fit for your client is, well, if you ask any business owner's number one grievance right now, it's probably the HR. It's the HR side of things.
And that's not, nothing against HR, because it's not their fault.
No, when I say HR, I'm simply saying personnel. I'm not saying the human resource people. The HR role has become so challenging. That's what I mean. Finding talented, character-based people, because as you said, Kevin, they are the representation of what your company is to the world. How do you guys do that on such a massive scale? Because we all want to know the answer to that.
It comes down to the biggest thing that we talk about is sometimes you just got to fold the hand. And so what I mean by that is we're doing a lot of character questions within skill assessing our employees, both internal and field employees. Like, okay, tell me about a time you did this. Tell me about a time you did this. What about this last job? What did you do there? Did you have any, issues? What were the, red flags on that? And just listening how they go about it, how they tell you this was bad, or how they maybe complain about a job.
Yeah. Is this in a person-to-person interview? Is this a skills-based test?
Yes, this is it's a person-to-person
Okay.
interview. This is just having a conversation with them, trying to understand. Because again, like you said, experience will get you so far. But if you don't show up on Monday, you can't work. You can't get anything done. Same thing goes for work ethic, because you can't really understand work ethic in a face-to-face interview over a phone. So it is really trying to do that. And then what I mean by fold the hand is like, you may get one meeting in, all the paperwork done. You may get to the last step and fold the hand. Just, he's not the right fit. You got to say no, as opposed to sending him out and then finding out day 3, he's not the right fit. For us in our industry, that means we start all over again, have to find someone new anyway. And then we just upset the client, or wasted time for the client, or wasted productivity or money across all fronts. And again, for us, it doesn't, we don't make any money if a guy goes to work for 3 days. It's a pure loss for us. Now we just had a headache for a client too. So really it comes down to our staff going, is this the right fit? And we do it with clients as well. Like, I mean, I think one of the things we do the best is say no a lot, which clients don't like to hear, field employees don't like to hear. Like, in general, no, we don't have the people for it. No, this isn't the right job for you. They may want to go. I mean, we have an app now that they can go search on any of the jobs, tell us they're interested, apply to it. And we have to sometimes call them. This may be a guy who has, a couple thousand hours with us and be like, you're not the right fit for this one. This one requires this, this, and this. I'm sorry, but maybe I have another job for you, or you don't. And so I think that helps us tremendously.
Yeah. I think that you guys do a person-to-person interview with every single employee that you have. And I'm not sure that a lot of the other staffing agencies necessarily do that.
I mean, there are people out there that, and they're not, most of the better staffing companies have a process for
Yes.
this. But I think one of the things that you asked, we get a little bit of a snapshot. So we look at the resume, and this is where you can see a 3-month job, a 1-month job.
Yeah.
And then they put their pay, and you see their pay keeps going up and then back down and up. They're chasing the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
So then that's fine. So now we know the character, we know what they want. Let's get them on a project, show them how we do it, show them that, oh, wow, on Mondays I get a notification of find my hours, and I can say if they're right or wrong. So my payroll's right on Friday. Wow, the experience working with 360 is great. Oh, they mass text me to tell me the holiday hours or a bonus that they're offering. So that's the things where we can make the right decisions to hire. And like Eric said, go back to them and say, be mad at me that we said no, but we told you no ahead of time, than me saying, I've got this covered, and then no one shows up on Monday.
Yeah.
Now you're really upset.
Yeah.
And a lot of staffing companies do that because they want to hold that order. They want to hold it. And our competitive advantage is we say, that's fine. When we say we have 10 people we're working on, log into in Access, see the 10 people. Other companies, 10, are they really 10?
Mm-hmm.
It's that little white area of the staffing industry. Because Eric's heard me say this, and I started saying it probably 6-7 years ago. Staffing companies are like a duck on the water. Cool, calm, and collected. You call and make an order, and they're like, quack, quack, quack. Below the water, they're like, oh no, what are we going to do? We're more reversed. Our heads are down under the water. We're always fishing. Our feet are in the air, and you can see whether we're moving or not. Oh, we're not moving right now? Okay, we don't have this order. I'll give you an opportunity to call the other staffing partner you have. We're going to have a long-term relationship just because we don't help you with this one job. And our clients appreciate that.
I love that mindset.
They say that all the time. They're like, no one else does that.
Well, and I think that's one of my big beefs with public companies is everything is short-term focus. The next earnings, the next earnings, the next earnings. And there's no long-term focus, not just public companies, but a lot of companies. And you guys are really focusing on the long-term. But I love what you just said, Kevin, was you find what motivates someone, what makes them tick. And that's so valuable in not just hiring, but in anything, in business partners, in personal relationships, when you're negotiating a deal. If you can understand what motivates them, which is exactly what you just described you essentially do, that allows you guys to have a successful outcome. I want to switch to Access Software because we've had a conversation about this briefly. How did you guys decide to basically take it in-house and keep it unto yourself when you could have brought that to the marketplace? And because I've looked at it, I've looked at some of the videos you guys have, and as a business owner myself, having a construction company, having a manufacturing company, been in a lot of different industries, just watching what you guys have created, I can see the value there. Tell me about why you guys decided just to, instead of trying to use that as an opportunity, because tech and service is, or software, I should say, is where you can get valuations that are just ridiculous. Give us some insight into why you guys decided that.
I mean, when we started the company, when we started Axis, it was just for us. And then we got a call, our developers got a call from one of our clients, a client that uses us and another staffing company. And they said the client staffing company was calling and saying, hey, we want Axis. They're like, oh, it's not, that's for sale. They called us and we looked into it. We're like, okay, we'll bill you $10,000 startup and monthly reoccurring on a 12-month minimum. And they're like, okay. And they started using it. And then we sold to another company and they started using it. And then we actually thought, okay, hey, we could take this, we could build it. It's single architecture, so we have to rebuild as a SaaS. We went to a staffing world show in San Diego where we demonstrated it. We saw that these big companies have been around. This is still a better option, but we didn't have a lot of the integrations. We were new. And
what year was this?
This was 2016.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So why did we pull it back? Well, I'll let Eric go into the details of it, but what we realized very quickly is that if you don't have good data in, you're not going to get good data out.
Mm-hmm.
And so the issues these companies had were because they weren't keeping it up.
Yeah, I mean, that we couldn't figure out how to clone Kevin and myself. So
the bane of every business owner.
That would have changed things. But really, like, it came down to the two companies were both using it. It was still 1,000 times better what they didn't have before. But it was, I think me and you both pounded our head against the wall of watching them, trying to help them use it to their advantage. But they didn't. They wanted to do steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 through 10, they're just like, this is like too much effort. As we're super detailed. And so like us do, like, there's no way we wouldn't do steps 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like, that's just what we do. And so thinking about it deeper, I'm like, this is what most staffing companies are like. This is what most construction companies are like. They're not really well put together. They get by.
Mm-hmm.
And so if this is how they're going to use our software, maybe our software is only meant for us. And the reality is it's probably not. Like, there are definitely a lot of companies that would really benefit from it and use it to its full advantage and dial it in and do great with it. But we also thought, okay, we have something that no one else has. Even the biggest of the big that preach they have this great software and technology, we know from an insider perspective, they don't have it. They don't. Ours will blow them out of the water with its stuff we do. So,
and you guys never intend to license it separately at this point?
No, not at this point. We
I guess you never say never, but
I mean, we think of ourselves as a technology company. You know, we're technology-driven staffing.
Sure.
And with AI and all the things that we've added to that, it's helped us to be more refined. Our recruiting, we have automatic candidate suggestion through AI on people come in, and notifications sent out in the middle of the night when no one's awake. And then when our recruiters come in, they have a refined list so they can get through that list quicker and make better decisions with the help. But yeah, we just realized that it was just too much. And at the time, I'm doing sales, Eric's doing recruitment, and I'm managing these two companies and I'm collecting money. Like, it was just like, we're doing too much. And they were just too hard to deal with.
You learned you had to focus.
Yeah, we just were like, it's not for us. So
yeah.
I mean, we're making money over here where we pull away from that and make less. And
oh yeah, we did the math. We're like, if we get 1,000 users on this, it'd be great. But it was interesting, but where were we experts? Let's focus on where we're experts, and we'll have more of an exponentially bigger growth in what we know.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did.
So I want to talk about how, and you guys see a front window into this. The reason so many entrepreneurs, business owners, every company has such a challenge with staffing now is because humans have dramatically changed. Our parents, they did, not ask what can your country do for you, but what can you do for your country? That mindset, and I'm a big believer that the technology, this phone, has made us all incredibly self-centered. We can get everything in a matter of 2 seconds, so we don't have the patience. And I think, I can't cascade just younger generations. I see it permeating all of the generations. Even me, someone sends me a text, and if I don't respond within a certain time, I get a little anxious. It's ridiculous, but that has impacted every single worker. And if you look at the average length of an individual who stays at a company, it is so dramatically different now than it was 30 years ago. And I believe it's because of everything we're talking about here. Our patience level, our commitment to consistency has changed. Number one, I want to hear what are your guys' experience on how you've seen the trend of labor and their desires to work for one company or work for multiple companies, or their desire to work at all. And then when we look 15, 20, 25 years down the road, when we talk about blue collar industries, when I talk to all of our subcontractors, a lot of them are 60 to 65. And I say, what are you going to do with your company? And either their kids tried it and they just couldn't muster it. They have zero interest in doing it. And they're just going to close it down. There's no one to sell. And so when I look out and I look into some of these industries and say, what's going to happen to all these companies because there's not someone that wants to take it? It's hard work. Blue collar is hard work. And the generations coming after us, when you can make so much money in tech, or you can make so much money being a YouTube specialist or all these other influencer, although people are finding out that's not all that it's cracked up to be. I want to talk about your guys' perspective as a staffing agency and how you're planning for that or thinking about that. So Eric, first you address how have humans, the psyche, changed over the 10 years you've been doing this, and how has that made your job more difficult or easier?
I mean, it's definitely made it more difficult. I mean, remote work alone has put a challenge in just the last 4 or 5 years here now. It's more prominent. So that's taken people off the table. I mean, just I'd say Uber and Lyft alone crush some of our lower paying jobs, because why would I go and break my back for 10 hours in a day in the sun and the heat when I can sit in my car seat and have air conditioning and listen to music? So that's challenging. The bigger thing is just really the want. Like, everyone sees college now as a necessity and I have to go, where I think it's starting to turn because it's super expensive. And I went, and Kevin went, mainly for the experience. And boy, did we have a good experience. But it wasn't that...
You guys went to good schools for the experience, that's for sure.
We did. But that being said, like, that experience is way more expensive now. For what? A piece of paper that says, unless you're coming out a lawyer, doctor, or something like that, like, I know how to do marketing. Like, give me 2 years, I'll teach you how to do marketing. Yeah, give me 2 years, I'll teach you how to do whatever. Like, there's no schooling to become a recruiter. I mean, so I do see it changing back to the trades in the future here. The biggest thing that's got to change is, like you said, like, everyone sees, oh, I can be an influencer or a YouTube specialist, whatever, and I'm going to make all this money. Well, once they start really having a shortage on building and infrastructure positions, those prices are going to go up. We're starting to see that in certain areas, like the prices for skilled quality electrician have gone up considerably, as where 15 years ago to even 5 years ago, it didn't jump that much. The last 5, it's jumped a considerable amount. And I think it's just going to continue to go up because we need people, we need to build it. If we don't build it, we're not making any money. And so ultimately, they're just going to start charging more for it.
But I still think, I went to high school in the 90s. We still had a shop class. So they gave people the opportunity to go try this, see if this is what you want. Because, Sally, you're not going to college, but you know what? You can make a career here and do this. Like my nephew right now, senior at Chaparral, he is doing the EVIT welding. Yeah, sure. He could do that 3 years after being out of welding school, make $100,000 a year. And it's also the view of construction. It's looked down upon. And I think we need education, we need change, we need, we need the people that make those decisions to help bring that up and bring that as part of, here's your path. It's not college only or go work fast food. There's all these other areas. And I think until we can do that, we're working with a couple local welding schools here in town to help, facilitate the needs that we have. But it's a struggle to get people. Why would I do this? And then when you let them know, they're like, oh, wow, I can. So I got to wake up early in the morning, but I'm done by 2. But yeah, that's going to be a challenge because right now, a labor job making $20 an hour or In-N-Out burger. Nothing that's in and out, but
Well, that's the thing. Culver's $16 to $24 an hour starting. Why in the world? I've been on plenty of job sites. You guys have been on plenty. Why in the world am I going to bust my back for $20 to $24 an hour when I can go somewhere and flip some burgers? Like, it's just. Now, I will say, I do believe that mindset. We've been talking about this since I was in 8th grade. This idea of tech versus, and I'm 36, tech versus college. I've seen slowly. I think that mindset's kind of changing, where it's not so frowned upon to go to a tech college and be a blue collar worker, be a welder, be a car mechanic, because you can make really, really good money, be an electrician, be a plumber. But when I look into the future, I still think there's just going to be a gaping hole. And like you said, Eric, prices are going to go up and everything's already not affordable. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. From your guys' perspective, how is AI going to change what you guys do and the workforce overall? Because that's been the big fear. And I did a whole podcast, probably 20 episodes, because everybody was worried AI was going to steal their job. So I talked about, is AI coming for your job? And what was interesting, as a CPA by trade, I actually think white collar should look out, because those that actually don't, if you're a white collar worker, I've been there, I've been in banking, I'm not going to offend you here, but do nothing. You just push money around and what have you. AI can do that, but blue collar, it will never replace that. You'll get more technology and more robots, which we ideally would like in some of the more dangerous industries, so that humans, the safety, and I know safety is important for you guys as we were talking about workman's comp coverage and factoring. But how do you guys see AI changing the labor force in 15 to 30 years?
It's hard to say because, like you said, you can build robots to help build a home by itself, right? Though you've seen those, they're 3D printing. But I still think you need a supervisor and you need the person that's skilled to run the electrical. There's only so much.
From a construction standpoint, I think AI will enhance it, but you're stuck. Like, until you can build the robot that can go out and do the whole thing, you're stuck with a lot. There's some stuff with, concrete pours and stuff like that will eventually take over and I think do that. But a lot of the stuff is not just a repetition of the same exact thing over and over. In terms of, like, you're talking white collar, I think there's a point here where we're using it in our office staff with our software. It's not there to replace them. It's there to increase their productivity, enhance the job, and ultimately make their life easier. If we can do that, I think we're going to have a happier employee. We're going to make a more fulfilled employee. They're going to feel more comfortable. They're going to get more, accomplished feeling out of it, because for us, they're placing more people. They're talking to our individuals. Like that whole mindset of just picking up the phone and dialing for a sales call or for to have a field employee pick up versus having the AI bring those people in and to talk that are interested in going to work or that are available for a job or that are interested in our product. Like, that is a way they love to have that conversation over and over and over all day long versus just leaving a voicemail, missing a call, so on and so forth. So I think there's a point where it could really enhance that job for you. and make your life easier being that white collar person. And then there's some tasks that just completely take away from you.
What specifically are you guys using AI for right now?
We're using it for, things to help with taking a whole resume and shortening it into 3 sentences so the recruiter can get a quick snapshot on, do I need to spend time on this? So then they'll go into the resume and really dive into it.
So you're using it as a resume screener?
Resume screener. We're using it for automatic parsing. When people apply to a job, it'll parse and pull in information and make the best decision of like, what's the more likely trait of this person if they have multiple skills. We're using it for our automatic candidate suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
So basically us putting in an order for 10 electricians, it goes through our entire database and matches out the best 5, 50, 100 candidates that fit that description based upon what all their information built in our system, from profile to resume to location to everything. And it's searching the whole thing and telling our recruiters, this is who you need to contact. And ultimately we have it set up where it's contacted them without our recruiters even touching.
So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk on the entrepreneur side, and you guys being entrepreneurs, being business owners, having the weight and responsibility of so many people on your shoulders, if you will. And obviously it's your whole team. Nothing good happens without a team. You guys seem like pretty chillax guys, just like you don't get stressed very much. But I don't care who you are, the human psyche is not designed to deal with the extreme highs of owning a business and dealing with all the different hats. You referenced this early, Eric. You guys couldn't clone yourself and you're all wearing 10 hats. And the extreme lows of being in business, and all within a few hours. That's the nature of being a business owner. So I want to hear this from both of you. But Kevin, how have you found a way to deal with that?
I mean, I think for me, knowing that I have the support of a partner who's keeping things in line on that, I put my head down at night. I'm not like, oh, we're not going to make payroll. We have that. And, I'm so aware of all those things, but I think that's the first part. But I don't know. I have a strong belief in myself, and we've made a decision to hire what we consider industry experts. Why we have offices all over the country, not necessarily because we want to do work in Atlanta, but the person there is an industry expert. They know the business. They understand the culture. We brought a lot of people in that had worked at tradesmen because those are the hardworking people.
Yeah.
There's other staffing companies. We've had people come in and we're like, wow, they didn't really work. That's just not how they work. So, that's what keeps the highs going. And then when you have those moments where large projects are coming to an end and you're going to, our billing is going to drop or whatever, I'm like, that's just temporary. We're going to keep growing. We've had a history of growing.
What's the lowest thing you've experienced since starting 360 Industrial Services? The moment where you're like, every business owner has a moment when one, and maybe it's multiple, but one that sticks in your mind that's like you basically just, every wall is broken down. For me, it was when you're two of the garbage business that a business partner and I started at 22 or 23, didn't know how we were going to make payroll. And I just got home after a 20-hour day, lay in my bed at 11 o'clock and basically just broke down crying, saying and because I was so afraid of bankruptcy and fear of failure and what everybody would think. And once I just got over that, just let that all go, it was like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. And you're going to fail. Who cares? That's fine. You claim bankruptcy, there's this stigma. Obviously, you don't want to do it, but if you did everything you could and you tried and you failed, you know what? There's a bigger risk in not trying anything. So that's my real memorable moment. We figured it out, worked fantastic. We had a great exit in 2019. Don't even remember how, but what was your moment like that?
I think that's part of, I guess we've had a lot of luck in what we've done, and it's not that I can tell you one specific moment, but the lows have not been as low. We haven't had that low moment to where we were really
Curious what you're going to say.
But when we had our payroll, and when we were working on all those different separate workers' comp policies, we went to what's called a PEO. There's a company out of Florida or New York, super shady company. We didn't know. They ended up going out of business. And we found out kind of at the last second. And we had to literally transfer all of our employees. We had California. We had no work in California. We had to work with a great guy, Jim, to allow, he put his company up as the workers' comp to put our employees on his payroll. And then we were paying him in order to keep, this growth that we had from 2 to 4.
So someone really helped you out.
Yeah. Jim McEachern, great guy. But I don't know, would you say that was because it was stressful. It was like, at the time, the majority of our business was in California. Yeah. A lot of distribution work.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? And
just for the benefit of our listeners, so a PO is basically outsourcing payroll, all the human information benefits. Some PEOs, there's lots of PEO platforms now.
Work comp.
Okay, that's what you would outsource, so workman's comp.
Yeah.
Get as many states as we could.
Yep.
And even that though, like, I guess it wasn't as stressful just because at that moment you were able to work on it. It wasn't like something we couldn't fix, as where like there's been other little things that like we couldn't do anything about that like stressed me out way more than that was like, okay, here's the problem. We can fix it. Let's make some phone calls. Let's do this. We can do that. There was options for us. So I guess in the moment you're like just working through it and you get quote unquote busy doing it. So it wasn't as bad, but like with some of the lows that I know many, many entrepreneurs in this world / city, but yeah, we haven't had nearly as many as most. And again, it's a lot of preparation. I think we do. We're pretty diligent. And luckily, yeah, I mean, we came together because it works really well. Like we communicate well, maybe not with our wives, but we do together well. So it's like, I know I can make a phone call to him and he's going to do X, Y, Z, and I don't have to even think about it the second time. Like it's going to get done and I can get on to what I need.
Or I'll come to him and be like, hey, I was thinking this. And he's like, look, I just wrote this down. I literally.
So you guys are
so we're both thinking the same way. So I think it's problem solving. You go back to like, I was just back in Columbus for a game and with a bunch of my fraternity brothers. And we were talking about.
Did you guys lose?
No, we beat Penn State.
Oh, rats.
And I had to hang out with Heisman Trophy winner twice and met the whole game.
Must have been tough.
But we talked about problem solving. And we made this joke that like when we were in college, when you had to meet someone, meet me here, find them. And we were like, yeah, here you go. It's 2 a.m. You get a collect call from your buddy. He's gone the wrong way down a one-way. The cops are there. Go. And you figure it out. Now kids would crumble. They wouldn't even know how to figure that out. So the problem solving of what we've been able to do, every obstacle, whether it's a frivolous lawsuit from a field employee, we place over 3,000 people a year. So you're going to have people that just make privilege. And so those are they're not really lows. They're just part of our business, but we're prepared to handle those things. And a lot of times we're like, I'm going to take this on head on. I know we can win this because we're in the right, we're prepared. We have all of our ducks in a row.
So you hit on something you're hitting all these topics that are such hot button topics or important topics in this day and age. Conflict resolution. That it basically doesn't exist anymore. The ability to problem solve, process, and again, because the phone has made everything so easy. You have little ones, Eric. Do you have little ones? Yep. I've got nieces and nephews, and they range from 9 to 15. Well, they really go up to 17. But even when you raise them well, this has changed the brain so much. In that, as you said, because we grew up, we actually had to figure these things out and there wasn't a shortcut. How do you guys handle that in a staffing agency? Like your pool of candidates, and when you're talking about oil and gas, when you're talking about construction, when you're talking about marine, when you're talking about mining, when you're talking about these industries, there are matters where if you don't figure out that conflict resolution and do it appropriately, safety is on the line. Or, I hate to say life and death, but you guys have been on job sites. When it doesn't matter what you're building, there is so much that happens in the field where you have to stop, think, maybe a few steps ahead and then come to a resolution. That just seems to be gone. What are you guys seeing? How do you think we as a society are going to fix or solve that? Because if we lose that, which I almost would argue, heck, you look at our politicians, you look at everything, that might be gone already.
Oh, there are a couple steps.
Yeah, because you look at some of the big organizations, the Intels of the world, they still have a process of pre-task planning, and they do that for a safety outcome. We're going to take this electrical box apart. What are the potential hazards? What are we going to work on? What are the tools? What do we need? We sign off. And then when they start, if there's a change, they back away and redo the change. Now, in the open merit shop world, that's a very slow, productive way, but it's a safety way.
Yeah.
So I think some do that way.
I think in general, though, like what we're doing on our end is preemptive. So when you're talking the resolution of a problem, like we have that with employees, with clients. So our biggest thing is if our communication is good up front ahead of time, while we're good on the relationship, while there are no problems, while everything's going, when the problem comes up, that level of communication that we have already established, whether it be through email, text, calls, notifications, whatever it is, in constant communication, it's going to make that problem drop down from 10 to a 7 right out of the gates. Because they're going to be able to call us. They're going to be able to email us. They're going to get response from us, and we're going to be able to talk through what that problem is. I think that's the bigger portion of it. Like for us, from a field employee perspective, like we're calling you after your first day of work. If you're finishing work at 3 o'clock, you're going to get a call probably between 3 and 4 just to follow up. How did it go? Was it everything we told you it would be? What problems came up? What do you not know? And like that alone breaks the ice when problems do arise, because problems are going to arise. No matter what job site, client, situation, whatever, they're going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
They can be very minor. They can be huge. We're dealing a lot of it with people.
Well, that's something Eric came up with. It was the idea that like, this is what I did. This is what he did. We don't have time to call everybody. So we have a whole employee relations team that calls the employee to say, how'd your first day go? Did you log in? Do you know how to get your pay stubs? Did you get our software? So you're helping. Problem that comes in this industry is getting payroll correctly on Friday. We're not having those issues because we're making sure on the front end that we're resolving a problem before it becomes a problem. You know,
what about the client? I mean, I have no doubt that you guys have conflict resolution figured out and you guys have built a whole company around that. But are you seeing the pool of candidates that have that problem solving capability dwindle?
Yeah.
And what are you guys going to do? I mean, this is a societal thing. Does that not make you guys nervous when your job is to find qualified applicants to give to these organizations in the field that can problem solve, that can communicate, that can say, hi, Kevin, my name's Andrew. Nice to meet you, and look you in the eye? Because have you ever gone through any drive-through? I'm not going to pick on any particular fast food, but pick your one. And you say, hey, you're through, it's thrown, thanks, have a good day. And you're on to they don't look at you. They don't smile. They don't anything.
That's my wife will tell you my biggest problem in life is going through a drive-through, because I get the food from them and I'm nervous to look at it in front of them and make sure that they got my order right. I just drive away and be like, all right, I'm not going to insult them. So,
but you guys, this is going to be a problem. I mean, you guys recognize this is how when you guys think 15 years down the road.
Well, I remember in like 2006, there was a document that came out, and I don't have the quote perfectly. U.S. News and World Reports. So the average construction worker is 48 years old. That has to have gone up.
Okay. Absolutely.
And then now the problem is, so that's the average. We're not getting the 21-year-olds, the 25-year-olds. So here's the thing. 40 years from now, there definitely will be an issue if we don't change things. I won't care about it. That's it. But right now in the world,
you will, because your kids will have to deal with it, or your grandkids.
But what we're trying to do now is like, we look at, it is a struggle. We're quote unquote stealing, and these employees are quote unquote leaving. Even our own employees, retention for us is huge. We can retain people; they're more profitable for us.
Mm-hmm.
We know the quality of the person. Hiring new people constantly, but we'll have people, they're retained, and they just on a Friday go, I'm going to leave because there's no job after offering $5 more an hour. because now it's a bidding war. So they're chasing the money. Now, sometimes they go and it's going to be 6 months and it's like 3 weeks and they call back. Like, oh, I wish I would have stayed. So that's a struggle for us.
The bigger thing though, we can only control what we can control. And that's the biggest thing you have to understand when you're running a business. There are things out of your control. So what can we do to make this situation the best we possibly can for not only ourselves and our both internal employees and our field employees? And what we can do is the preactive stuff, like communicating to them, painting the picture, like what are they getting into before they get to the jobs? We are correct and the expectation is set for them. And we either over exceed it in terms of it being very good or hit it right on the mark. We're good. The attitude's better. They're not going to our office that's just normal and every day when they expect to go to Google's was free food, slides, sleep pods. They're going to be, and so in turn, they get to that job site. It's everything they expected. They're happy.
Yeah,
they're good. And so, can we produce a happy employee to our client's job site from day one, and then continually make that experience good for them by paying them on time, by communicating with them their hours ahead of time, by communicating with them, what we have on the back end, that we have jobs coming up that are a good fit for them when this job is finished, so on and so forth, because that really allows them to think about the job at hand versus where's my next paycheck coming from? What about the next job I have to get onto? Are they am I going to lose my job? Like all those things. Again, let them think about their family. Let them think about their house and what they got to do there. And let them think about the job at hand while they're on it from, 6 to 3:30 or whatever.
Yeah. That's great advice for any business owner, really for anybody. You can only control the things that you control. So don't worry, but that's hard to put into practice sometimes. You guys obviously have a great business relationship. I get asked this all the time. Because my first business partnership was fantastic. And then I've been through a few that weren't so great. A previous guest, Steve, I think you guys, or no, not Steve, Pete, I asked him about business relationships. And you guys know Pete, right? Do you? Pete Schnepp?
Yep, I do.
Okay.
Painter.
Yes, in vision painting. So I asked him, tell me about business partners. Should you have them? Shouldn't you have them? And he had a very interesting answer on what he's seen. You'll have to watch that podcast to see his answer. What is your guys' opinion? I was talking to a college class one time and they said, how did you find your business partner? How did you know it was going to work out great? For you guys, obviously, just in the last hour or so we've been together, you guys have indicated having a business partner allows you to take a tremendous amount of stress out of your life. How did you guys know you guys were going to be good business partners? Because you've all heard the stories that go awry.
You probably hear more that go awry than you do the good.
Exactly.
But for us, it just we worked well together. It was easy to talk. We were on the same page with a lot of things. And we both work. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, communication's always good between us. We're always working. There's probably to
a fault.
Yes. And even the communication level of there's very rarely, there's minutes that go by between either our texts, an email, a call. We're just quick and we struggle with others and don't really understand, why did it take you so long? Why did it take you 5 hours to get back to me? It's a work. What were you doing for 5 hours that you couldn't communicate back to me about something? Whether it's through text, through email, through phone,
that's between each other or between
someone else,
a
colleague or a client or whatever. What took you away from calling me for 5 hours?
Doesn't that seem ridiculous though in this day and age?
It does.
It does in this day and age.
I'm going to say that question didn't come out the way. In the olden days, at least 24 to 48 hours. And now our expectations is 5 hours.
Yeah.
Isn't that expectation a little bit ridiculous though?
My dad used to have a roll of quarters with him and he'd have to call back into the office to get his messages. And you get back and then you get through your messages and you call, hey, I see you called on Monday, Bob. Now it's if you don't get that.
Well, Andrew, how many places do you go where you don't take your phone?
Well, none. Very, very few.
Neither does anyone else. How many unread text messages do you have? right now?
None. Well, whatever's come through here.
Okay. Understood. So when you get a text message, are you responding? Like, what's going to make you not respond for 5 hours?
Okay, so had another podcast guest talking with him, Mark Stratz, and his 14-year-old got into the car with him, and he looked at her phone and she had 143 unread text messages, and it had been an hour.
Oh, well, that's different.
Okay, so you believe that this expectation that we have to get back to each other within a matter of 5 hours is acceptable? Like don't you think that is causing the stress and the anxiety and all the suicide that we're seeing in teenage kids in 20s? Because you just said it yourself, that's an expectation, Eric, that you have. Yeah. And I'm not pointing the finger at you, because when I text someone and they don't respond, whether it's professional, that's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. It's changed us.
I guess I have it from a work perspective more than a personal perspective.
Correct.
Sure.
And so if it's a work day and we're doing it, like, I don't necessarily expect you to say, hang on, here's your solution, but we'll get back to you. I'm on a call, in a meeting, like an away message, like on an email, stuff like that. Because now, see, again, when we were children, at least I'm assuming,
we didn't have these.
No, but no news was good news. If you didn't know where I was at, like if you didn't hear, like he's fine. Versus now, no news is, oh my gosh, what is going on? I'm assuming the worst. Like, this is horrible. Like, what's, that whole, your brain is just moving a million miles an hour, as opposed to, I'm good. Like, get back to you in a second. I'm on a call. I'm going to be in a meeting for a couple hours. And you can have an away text message. You can have an away email and like stuff like that. Because our clients call, and you got to remember, what I tell our team all the time is the most important person in your life is you. So if that's the case for you, what do you think it is for our client? So their job, their need, whatever their employees need, is the most important thing for them. And so by you just responding, I'll get back to you in an hour, sets a level from here of anxiety for them down to here. So whether it's something as simple as they have a safety question, or they have an injury, or they have even work, like they didn't get their paycheck. Like, you letting them know and communicating back to them that I understand, like, I'm going to get back to you, you're important to me, is enormous.
Yep.
So I think it works both ways of like, you're talking about like, oh, I got all these text messages, I got to respond. But like, if you don't get a response from someone, that anxiety for them goes way to the moon.
That's a great point. And, I can't stand that about where we are in society, but that's where we are. So you can sit and complain about it, but you make a great point. Just communicate. Hey, I'll get back to you in 5 hours, or just let them know.
The only one I don't worry about is my father, because it could be days.
Yes.
And then he hits every text message and lights them all in a matter of 10 minutes. They all come through.
I'm lucky if mine was, half the time I got to call him 3 times and then I'll call back or next day. So what advice would you guys give? Because you guys have been tremendously blessed based on what you have said. Not that you haven't had problems, but you guys have really good mindset. You've both indicated you haven't had some of the real lows that a lot of business owners have had, close to bankruptcy or failures. Not that you haven't had troubles by any means. You've got a relatively fantastic business relationship. Have you guys ever disagreed on where to take the business?
No, I think I'm the same.
Okay. And that's an important one if you're ever going to get into business.
Because that's where you had mentioned one thing I was going to jump in about our partnership is, like, we can go and do something together, but we don't do a lot of things outside of work together. Not that we don't like each other, but I think that's helped.
Yeah.
Because there's a separation of, now, when he got U2 tickets and his wife was like, don't want to go. And my wife's like, yeah, we went. A great time. We're hanging out, but we were talking business.
Yeah.
We have that commonality, but I'm not a big Dave Matthews fan as much as he is, but I still like his music. But so I think maybe that's part of it. Like, if you're a partner and like your families and you're doing all this stuff, then there's internal drama, and that could lead to maybe animosity.
Yeah.
Someone has something you don't have. I don't know. That could be. That's just my thought.
Yeah. I mean, even that relationship though, like, I mean, Ohio State wins, which happens a lot. Sorry. I'm messaging him like all the time. Like, and that's just us going back and forth. But yeah, ultimately being on the same page is huge. Because, like, I mean,
trust. You guys obviously have trust.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing where most business relationships break down, is either the trust was violated, maybe there was never trust there, or they haven't gotten to the point where they can trust each other.
But he's not stealing my signs. Okay. That's Jim Harbaugh's deal. He's not stealing my signs.
Oh, I'm not even going to go there with you Ohio State fans. Kevin, why do you think most businesses fail? Why do you think most entrepreneurs fail?
I think, and this again is a quote that I always mess up, but Bobby Knight used to have a quote that said, "The will to win is only as good as your will to prepare to win." Meaning, I want to start a business and I want to make $1 million. But then, I have to do this. I have to do this. We would love to work on the business. And in the last couple of months, we've actually had some really good opportunities, opportunities like this and meeting with marketing companies where we're actually talking about the business and the growth. 90% of what we've done is in the business. We are, I handle a lot of the internal employees and a lot of our clients, some of our bigger accounts. Would love to just push that off. But I know what's going to happen when I'm handling it. Eric knows what's going to happen when he's overseeing operations and payroll. So because we've been working in the business, we've had, I think, the success. I think that's what people have to understand is hard work is hard work. If it's hard, that means it's usually worthwhile.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes there's worthwhile things that are easy, like beating Michigan multiple years.
I was going to say, I can't think of any, but...
but again, like...
that ebbs and flows, so you just wait. Once it flows, ebbs back in my direction.
You've had the last two.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a Lions fan, so now who are you?
I'm not really an NFL.
Okay.
Bears.
Oh boy, this is a great opportunity for me that, of course, after a shellacking that we just had, I'm not going to talk about. We won't go there. I think that's a good point in terms of, I lost my train of thought.
We were talking about where businesses fail and why they fail.
Oh yeah.
Working in the business.
Yeah. Eric, that quote is fantastic. And I think you make a lot of people are like, I'm going to start a business, and they do no preparation, or they don't do the preparation that they need to do to make it happen. Eric, why do you think businesses fail?
I think it is the person in charge isn't willing to do the hard stuff. So I still end up doing a ton of hard things that no one really wants to do within our business. Now, they may be more technical. I maybe finally have some assistance with, my controller, Justin, and that will definitely dive in and do some of the legwork with me, which is great. But that's the stuff that matters the most. That's going to put you across the finish line. And that doesn't really stop in year 3, in year 5, in year 8, in year 10. It's still going on. Like Kevin said, I'd love to work more on the business, the planning, looking at acquisition, stuff like that. But the reality is being able to understand, and I think that's where it's really helped us building the software. We're still in the business, and as much as we're on the business. Mm-hmm. So we understand the intricacies of every little detail of recruiting, sales, client management, everything. So when we're building that software, we know what works. And that's where I think a lot of companies have missed it. So when you're working in the business, you're going to do the hard things. And that's those little hard things matter the most.
Yeah. Kevin, you just talked, you'd like to be able to work on the business more and not in the business. You guys recognize, and I talk about this with a lot of my guests about, this is your baby. But at some point, if you want to get to where you ultimately are trying to go, you're going to have to hand a lot of those day-to-day responsibilities over. And it sounds like you guys want to be there or working to get there. How are you guys going to do that? And not have a heart attack at night?
Yeah, I mean, I'm starting more. We've made some hires of people specifically to help with some of my day-to-day thinking, his day-to-day things. And we're allowing, a couple of years ago, Eric finally relinquished invoicing to someone in our office, and she's nailing it.
Great.
And he could put his head down. But for the first 4 months, he was still auditing and making sure things are right. And I'm still looking at things myself. But yeah, I just mentioned that to him today. I'm like, I've had about 2.5 weeks where I haven't had to do this certain thing multiple times a day because we have someone, Don, that's doing that right now. And it's working smooth. It's okay. It's working. So
it's just finding people that want to do it and that are capable of doing it the way we want it done. We understand that people have certain skill sets and they're They have things they like to do. They have things they're good at. And so I'd like to put them in a situation where they can do those things they like doing, do those things they're good at doing, and then not throw 5 extra things on their plate that they either don't want to do or are not good at, and then ultimately kind of water down their role or their position with the company so that ultimately we get the high productivity / products, if you will, of our service that flows out to the field employee, flows out to the client with what they do. But we don't get that watered down stuff that they didn't want to do in the first place.
Yeah.
And like, not that I always want to do it, but like, I think, I don't want to say our care level's higher, but it's just.
Well, as an owner, your care level is higher. That's a reality.
Well,
Owners are always going to care more about it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we've always taken this mentality of that we don't know everything. But I can tell you what has worked for me. Worked for me as a sales rep. It worked for me as a president within a company. It worked for me as an owner. So if you don't follow these steps, then you're failing. I can't. Then I'm like, okay, well, I don't know. Now, if you can do something different and you have success, teach me. Let's learn from each other. We do that in our sales calls every week, where we're doing role playing and like, wow, I hear stuff now. Then I'm like, wow, I'm going to start utilizing that way of a response. But yeah, I think we just have to kind of rip the Band-Aid off and be willing to say, no one's going to die. Our business is not going to go under. It might be a little sleepless nights for a couple of weeks and see what happens. And then if the train comes off the tracks, then we jump back in.
Yeah. Well, and I like what you said, trust but verify. You get someone in, you are trusting but verifying for 4 months with this person that's doing your invoicing. Where do you guys want to take the business?
In terms of revenue, we want to double, triple the size we're at now. Explore new industries. I think we made our software to a point where we really want to make a couple acquisitions just to validate a little level of validity in terms of that we can plug in someone else's database, clientele, and improve their business just by our software alone.
Mm-hmm.
If they know we can.
You're talking about acquire other staffing agencies.
Correct.
Okay.
And then also open up a couple different verticals. You mentioned earlier, we're just opening up our marine division, very similar in terms of construction into what we're already doing, but being able to open other divisions, other industries within staffing, because really our software is not just set up for construction. It's set up, it could do healthcare, it could do office personnel, it could do manufacturing very easily.
Hospitality and anything that's an hourly based.
Mm-hmm. Are you guys happy you went into staffing? Kevin, you answer that first.
Yeah, I mean, not knowing, I had no construction background other than when I worked at Bosch Power Tools. So I had to learn.
You had a 1 month time at Top Flight Construction.
So that was our original business partner, and he hid that. He offered that to make a buffer with my release from tradesman. To not, I didn't break the non-compete. I just didn't want to have to answer the phone calls where I went.
Okay.
But man, now I lost my train of thought.
You were never in construction.
So I had to learn, and then very quickly I realized, okay, Eric, I've been telling you, we've been on job sites. People are showing us plans. Like, oh, look at this tensile strength and this beam here coming in. And I'm like, yeah. And I don't want to embarrass them to embarrass me, but I also don't want to embarrass myself. And so, I want to be able to have the conversation to someone understand. But what I had actually worked for when I was in Boston before I left, I worked for a Deco employment. I was for just a typical temporary staffing company and I like the relationship and that, if I sign up, Bye Bye Baby, they're going to continue to use us for warehouse people forever.
Yeah.
And so that's what the staffing model for us I'm not speaking for Eric, but what I like is we're not always looking to bring on new companies. We want to bring on the right companies and we want to have repeat business. So we have relationships. Same thing with our field employees.
Yeah.
So, that's what I like. I mean, at the end of the day, we're selling ourselves and the customer service that we're going to bring to the table. And that's what I like about staffing, because it is a service. So you have to be ready that they're going to call you on a Friday and they need something and you need to say what's going on. And, we're there to support their needs.
Pretty much all of your industries don't work on Saturday and Sunday. Is that accurate to say?
Some of our guys work 7/12.
Oh, they do. Okay. Okay.
We have night shifts, the whole thing. Yeah.
And you're not getting calls in the middle of the night.
Not anymore. I mean, we did for
Our employees are.
Okay.
Every once in a while, we'll get an injury call in the middle of the night or something.
Wow.
My phone rings for that, but like that's far and few between at this point for us.
Yeah.
Our biggest thing was East Coast time versus West Coast time, because that is a bugger. 6 a.m. start time.
Yeah, it is.
You're waking up at 3, making sure the employees are there, and then going back to bed. Maybe wake.
Are you still doing that, or now you have a team that helps you with that?
We have a team that
over there in New York. Okay.
Yeah.
So Eric, you're happy you went into staffing, because it's just, when people think I'm going to start a business, this isn't one of the first businesses that comes to mind. And you guys obviously had a ton of experience at Tradesman, and you guys saw an opportunity in the marketplace and you took advantage of it.
I don't think we would have started a staffing company out of college with no idea what staffing was.
Yeah.
It's that we knew what we were doing. We felt very comfortable and confident in what we were doing. We're like, hey, we can do this, and we can, take this to the next level.
Yeah.
So I think that's.
Yeah. Even thinking about it as large as it is, I guess we probably didn't even think it was going to be that big at that point in time, but we knew we could be successful at what we're doing. In terms of going into staffing and liking the industry, like if a construction I knew is from my dad ran an asphalt paving company all growing up. My mom worked for equipment rental companies. So like I knew construction.
Sure.
I didn't know what a TIG welder did, stuff like that. I wasn't very detailed in that respect, but I knew most of the trades. Like I got that. But in terms of like the servicing, like you talk about, and the relationships, our goal is to really partner with those companies forever and make sure that they're growing and profitable each and every year. And how can we make them more profitable? How can we, build that relationship so ultimately they make more money? So if we can do that, we're going to be an asset to them. And I like that portion of it. Like never in my wildest dreams do I ever think I'd go on, oh yeah. But you got to think too, like 2003, 2006, staffing was almost frowned upon and not nearly as well known as it is now. Now, even 10 years ago, it wasn't. Like now everyone knows what staffing is. It is not frowned upon. It's looked at as a resource, which finally it's getting there, that we don't have to keep saying, this is a good thing. This is why you do it. You be strategic in using it. Like we do have those conversations pretty much every sales call we have, just to make sure that they're on the same page as us. But a lot of them are already on that page. Like they already know why they want to use.
Yeah. Now we're leveraging more what was your experience or the annoyance with staffing, and how can we show you what we're doing differently? Like people say, what's different about you? No staffing company out there is like, oh, we have high rates. Our guys are horrible. And don't call me on Wednesday because that's men's league. No one says that.
Yeah.
But that's the reality is, and again, we talked about this earlier. It's not the staffing company. It's the people. And where's their drive? And you talked about things that aren't inherent, and you can't teach drive. People either have drive.
Yeah.
So you hire someone that has great personality and drive, you could teach them. But, the other way around, it's hard.
Yeah. Almost impossible. You guys have been very gracious with your time. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you guys think from an entrepreneurship perspective, a business perspective, heck, even a personal life perspective, that you guys would like to share would be particularly important for our listeners to hear?
I think we love our wife and kids.
We do.
Well, that's a good thing. Although it sounds like there's some communication opportunity that you guys can work on. Yeah. Said every single one of us men in our entire lives.
Yep.
Eric, Kevin, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Having us.
Yeah. Well, that's all the time that we have for this week's episode of the Andrew Holland Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. Remember, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, the Andrew Holland Podcast, so that you get the updates every week when we post the video version of the podcast. Please help us grow by liking the channel, subscribing to the channel, liking each of the episodes that you watch. Please do the same thing on your favorite audio platforms. If you find the Andrew Holland Podcast, please subscribe to it and like the episodes that you enjoy. And follow me on Twitter, Holland Podcast. Again, this only grows or gets as big as we collectively make it. I always enjoy talking to you, our listener, on my Twitter feed and throughout the week on topics we covered in that week's episode, or just general business or life topics. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk again next Wednesday. Thank you for listening to the Andrew Holland Podcast. Be sure to visit our website, theandrewhollandpodcast.com, for additional content on business, entrepreneurship, and everything in between. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Andrew Holland Podcast, to get notifications when new podcasts have been released. And lastly, follow us on Twitter, A Holland Podcast. That's A Holland Podcast, for all the conversations we're having outside the podcast. Thanks again so much for joining us this week. Have a great day, and we'll talk again next week.